4.2 is going to be graphing quadratic functions when they're in standard form. Now vertex, they were nice when they were in vertex form, like 4.1, that we could just use our transformations of stretching, compressing, reflecting, whether it was going left, right, up, down. Standard form is not going to be that quick just looking at it and being able to tell. So let's take a look when they're in that standard form, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. How do we graph them? So to start off with, I need you to write down this equation, x equals negative b divided by 2a. This is the equation that we're going to need to use to help us find the axis of symmetry and then our vertex. So this first example, notice how it's in that standard form. My a is going to be 2, my b is going to be 8, and my c is going to be negative 2. Okay, my a is always the number in front of my x squared, the b is always in front of your x, and the c is the number by itself. So when it's in standard form, I can't use the transformations, but instead what I'm going to do, I'm going to plug it into this equation over here. So I have negative b, which my b is 8, so negative 8 divided by 2 times my a, which my a is 2. Then I'm going to simplify that down. So I have negative 8 divided by 4, which is negative 2. So x equals negative 2. That's going to give me my x value of my vertex, or x equals negative 2 is going to give me my axis of symmetry. Okay, so then to find the y value of my vertex, I'm going to have to plug in negative 2 and for my x's and solve for my y. So I'm going to do that step next. Then I'm going to plug in my negative 2. I'm going to simplify that down doing order of operations. So I need to do my exponents first. Negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. 8 times negative 2 is negative 16. 2 times 4 is 8. Then I bring down my negative 16 and my negative 2, and then I go left to right. So 8 minus 16 is negative 8, minus 2 is negative 10. So that's going to be my y value, is negative 10. So now I have my vertex. That my vertex is negative 2, negative 10. Now if I take a quick look at my graph, I would go to over to negative 2, down to negative 10, and it's going to be that point. And then from here, this is positive, so my arrows are going to be going up. If that 2 is negative, then my arrows are going down. So that would be a quick sketch of what my graph looks like. Now, if I were to, which I had that over here, either way, label everything. My vertex, again, is negative 2, negative 10. My axis of symmetry is this x value of my vertex, so x equals negative 2. My domain, it's a parabola, so all reals. And then my range is my y value, so I look at my y, which is negative 10. And then the arrows are pointing up, so it's greater than or equal to negative 10. If the arrows are pointing down, then it's less than or equal to. And the reason the domain is always all reals, notice how my arrows, if I would zoom out on my graph, they would keep going further and further to the right, further and further to the left. So every single x value works. So it is all real numbers that I could plug in any x value, it doesn't matter, fraction, whole number, decimal, that it will work in the graph. Now this next one, I have y equals negative 3x squared minus 4x plus 6. So I use that same equation. My a is going to be negative 3, my b is negative 4, and my c is 6. So then I plug that into my equation, x equals negative b divided by 2a. So I have x equals negative b, so negative 4, which is just positive 4. Then 2 times my a, which is negative 3. I simplify that down, I get 4 over negative 6, which reduces down to negative 2/3. So then that is my x value on my vertex, and then I need to solve for my y value. So I plug in x equals negative 2/3 in. I simplify that down. I can just type that into my calculator just like that if I would like to, or use your order of operations, and I get 7 1/3 or 7.3 repeating. So then that's going to be my y value, so that is my vertex. Notice that my a is negative, so my arrows are going down. So this is going to be my highest point, my maximum. Again, this x value is going to be x equals that number is my axis of symmetry. My domain, it's a parabola, so it's going to be all reals. And then my range, I'm going to use this y value. Since this is the highest point, everything is below it, then its y is less than or equal to 7 1/3. The next two examples that we're going to take a look at is converting standard form to vertex form. So if they give us a standard form and they say write this equation in vertex form, what we need to do, we need to be able to solve for our vertex. So we're going to do the same process. We're using this x equals negative b divided by 2a to help us solve for our x. So our a is 2, our b is 10. We don't need our c, which it would be 7. We plug that in, so we have negative 10 divided by 2 times our 2. Simplify that down, so we get negative 10 divided by 4, which is negative 2.5. So that's going to be our x value. And then we're going to plug that in to our equation, and we're going to solve for our y value then. So we simplify this down, we get negative 5.5. And make sure if you're using your calculator, you put in the parentheses just like I, or if you're doing order of operations, you need to do exponents and then multiply. And so then that is going to be our vertex. So then from here, if we look back at the original equation, our a is 2. And those are the three things we need, our h, our k, and our a, to be able to put it into our vertex form. And our h and our k is just our vertex. Okay, so then we plug those in. Our a is 2. We got that just from up here. Our a is 2. And then notice this is negative 2.5, so it's going to the left 2.5. So to go to the left, we need to add 2.5, so it's going to be the opposite of this. And then this negative 0.5 is going to go right here at the end in the k spot. So let's try one more of these. So we have y equals negative 1x squared plus 4x minus 5. So our a is negative 1 and our b is 4. We need to find our vertex to start off with. So we have negative 4 divided by 2 times our negative 1. So negative 4 divided by negative 2 is positive 2. So that's our x value. Now we need to solve for our y value. So we plug in 2. We do 2 squared is 4 times that negative 1 is negative 4 plus 8 minus 5, which reduces to negative 1. So 2, negative 1 is our vertex, or our h and our k. And then this negative 1 is still our a. So then we plug that into vertex form. So we have y equals our a, which is negative 1, times x minus our h. It's going to be the opposite of that. So negative 2, which moves it to the right 2, squared, and then minus 1. Make sure your exponent always goes on the outside of your parentheses, not on the inside.